Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I'm going to be sharing 5 insane scenarios for the 2020 NHL Draft Lottery. Now the 2020 NHL Draft Lottery is in just a few weeks, and with every single draft lottery there's unpredictability and speculation, but that is even larger this time around, especially with the losers of the qualifying round being included in this year's lottery. But what are the biggest and most insane scenarios that could end up being likely and a possibility with this draft lottery coming up? Watch till the end for all the picks and the info, and of course, hit that big red subscribe button for more videos just like this one. Now, if there's going to be one thing that this NHL draft lottery is going to be known for, it is the unpredictability. Whether it's completely boring top 3 or totally new teams, there's going to be a lot of insanity and speculation regarding this draft lottery in a month. And a good example of that comes with our first insane scenario for the 2020 draft lottery, and this is probably the most likely of all of these 5 to actually happen, and one that I think for Sens fans they would definitely take. That being 3 top 15 picks in this draft, and it actually is very likely here. And again, Ottawa has the second and third best odds. They have their own pick at number 2 and San Jose's pick at number 3, but they also have the New York Islanders pick, and this is where again it's interesting because with that pick specifically, it is top 3 protected, so unfortunately they can't get the top 3 in this draft at the very least, but they can get 3 top 15 picks. If the Islanders were to somehow lose that series against the Florida Panthers, if that pick didn't end up going to the top 3, they would have that pick. They would have it probably in the 11 to 15 range. Obviously, not a top 3 pick, but still pretty good. So let's say Ottawa wins number 1 and number 2. They got Lafreniere, Quinton, Byfield, and a pick around number 12. And for the Ottawa Senators, that's one heck of a haul. Now, for the Sens, just 2 top 5 picks is already franchise changing, but if they got the first overall pick, the second overall pick, and then around that 12 to 15 range, that is just absolutely insane. You got Alexis Lafreniere there, who I think will be in the running for the Calder Trophy next season. Quinton, Byfield, who might need another year in junior, but you already have Alexis Lafreniere tearing it up with the Sens in your program that year. So I don't know why you would need Quinton Byfield there. I think it would be a little bit rushing him. I think junior would be the best. And then you have that top 15 pick, which if we're talking in like the 12 to 15 area, you could have a Yaroslav Askarov there. You could have a Seth Jarvis, a Jack Quinn potentially, defensemen like Braden Schneider or a Ryan O'Rourke available. There is a lot of options for the Sens. And obviously for Sens fans, you're rooting against Jean-Gabriel Pageau, which kind of sucks. But again, a top 15 pick is a top 15 pick. Now getting into the second insane scenario for the 2020 NHL Draft Lottery, and this is one that I'm guaranteed will burn the hockey world down, but it still would be pretty entertaining. The Toronto Maple Leafs getting a top 3 pick. Now there is a lot that goes into this, and it is a very slim chance, but it is still possible. The first thing simply is that the Toronto Maple Leafs need to lose against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Then the whole plan is coming together. After that happens, they'll be in the draft lottery and have a chance at a top 3 pick. And you might be saying, oh, but Grav, the Leafs don't have their first round pick. And that's where you're wrong, because the Leafs have that pick top 10 protected, don't you see? I'm teaching you everything. Obviously, I'm kidding, but you get the drift. If that pick ends up becoming a top 3 pick, then the Leafs would get that pick, and then their 2021 first would transfer to the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, this also factors in with the New York Rangers pick because they have the Canes pick. So let's say the Canes also missed the playoffs because they got beat by the New York Rangers. If the Leafs got the first overall pick and the Canes got the second overall pick with their pick that was on New York would end up automatically getting the latter pick, which was one of the clauses there. So they would get the second overall pick and Toronto would get the first. Not confusing at all, but you know what I mean. Now, the Leafs even getting a number 3 overall pick would be insane, but again, the possibility is there that they could get the first overall pick in the 2020 NHL Draft. Of course, if they get first overall, they're taking Alexis Lafreniere. Second overall is a different story because maybe they take Quinton Byfield, maybe they don't because they already got Austin Matthews and John Tavares, who last time I checked are pretty good centers in this league. And number 3, I think it would be interesting. Jamie Drysdale could maybe be the pick there as they need defensemen, even though they got Rasmus Sandin and Liljegren in the system. That would be a pretty interesting ad. But just the Leafs being top 3 in a draft, no matter how they pick, would burn the hockey world down. And honestly, I'm here for it. Now we can turn back the dial a little bit more to a situation that would tear only 7 teams apart as opposed to 30 NHL teams apart. That being the third insane scenario for the 2020 NHL entry draft, the possibility and scenario that 3 qualifying teams get into the top 3 of the 2020 NHL draft. And this is one that, again, is super unlikely, but there is still a possibility. Now, with the qualifying playoff teams, there is the possibility that the ones that lose could end up getting 1, 2nd, and 3rd. Again, it is super unlikely, but the balls could end up going that way. And then we have the second lottery, and I'm just imagining here that we have 2 lotteries here. You have the top 3, all 3 of which went to qualifying teams that were either to Montreal or a team up to the likes of the Pittsburgh Penguins, fighting for those top 3 spots. That would be absolutely insane, and obviously for Red Wings and Sens fans, not exactly ideal. But I'm just imagining here, if we have that draft lottery where we have the first one that ends up being pretty much non-existent because we don't get any answers except that all 3 picks would go to qualifying round teams, and then we would go on to the second lottery where after all the losing qualifying teams are done and over with and we know those teams, they would all fight for the top 3 spots in the draft. And if we're just looking at my predictions here, you would have teams like Montreal, Carolina, you would have Florida, you would have Columbus in the East, and in the West you'd have Chicago, you would have Arizona, you'd have Minnesota, and then you'd have the Calgary Flames. Not a bad group whatsoever, and them fighting over the top 3 picks, a lot of those teams being playoff teams, that would be absolutely insane. Now let's just say for this video that the top 3 teams in terms of record that I predict to lose the qualifying round end up getting the top 3 picks of this draft. It would go a little bit like this. The Carolina Hurricanes would get the 1st overall pick, the Columbus Blue Jackets would get the 2nd overall pick, and then the Florida Panthers would get the 3rd overall pick. So obviously we're in wacky, insane territory, but that is the extreme. And then you have teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins, who if they miraculously lose versus the Montreal Canadiens, could be in the running for a top 3 pick. And obviously I don't want that to happen because it's just like, what is even happening here? And why are you getting a top 3 pick? But it is a possibility, and it is absolutely crazy. And that leads me to my 4th most insane draft lottery scenario. This one that I totally do not want to see happen, but is still a possibility. This one being the Pittsburgh freaking Penguins winning the 1st overall pick and drafting Alexis Lafreniere. Now, in terms of the qualifying round teams, it goes Pittsburgh and Chicago, and those are the only teams that I just don't want to see get in the top 3. Everybody else I'm kind of okay with because it's like, at least it's not Chicago or Pittsburgh, right? But Pittsburgh and Chicago both could realistically get Alexis Lafreniere. Pittsburgh, even though I dislike the Blackhawks more, would be way more of an interesting and also heck no situation with the 1st overall pick. Because even though I would want to see Alexis Lafreniere somewhere else, he would just be so freaking good. And that's why I'm so scared of him going to Pittsburgh. And just imagining him in year 1 in Pittsburgh, it would be a perfect fit. You have a healthy Jake Gensel, healthy Jason Zucker, and then you have Alexis Lafreniere on your 3rd line left wing. Come on, the NHL. Give him some ice time, please. Now, the likelihood of this actually happening is very slim because even if the Penguins lost versus the Montreal Canadiens, which is probably not going to happen, they would have the 15th best odds no matter what because they were the best regular season team out of those qualifying teams, so no matter what other teams win, they would have the 15th odds. But they would still have a 1% chance, which is much better than a 0% chance. And I would just be thinking that entire time about the Penguins possibly being there. I love Alexis Lafreniere, and no offense, Pens fans, but I just want to see somebody new win the Stanley Cup. If Lafreniere goes to friggin' Pittsburgh, plays with Sidney Crosby, we might not see a new cup winner for like 5 more years. Give some love to the rest of us, would ya? My goodness. But I will say this, even though I don't want to see Pittsburgh win any more cups and I want to see some share of the love, it would be a lot better than him on Chicago. So, there's that. And now getting into easily the most insane scenario out of these 5, and one that I am pushing for personally, obviously. This one involving the New York Rangers. And with the Rangers, this is like a 0.1% chance of happening, but it is a possibility that they win the Stanley Cup and get a top 3 pick in this draft. And pretty much everything has to go right for them. Now, everything has to go right for them to win a Stanley Cup for the most part too, but everything has to go right for them to also get a top 3 pick. The way this happens is first, obviously, they got to win the Stanley Cup, which, again, I'm not exactly really predicting at this point. I mean, I like the Rangers, but no, it's not going to happen. But if they did win the Stanley Cup, that would set up a lot of things, because firstly, you have the Canes, who they would end up beating on way to the Stanley Cup. They end up giving the Rangers their pick. But the condition was that it would be the lower pick of either Toronto or Carolina, so farther in the draft. The only way that New York would get a top 3 pick with this thing is Toronto getting into the top 3, and the Canes pick also that New York has getting into the top 3 as well. The only way that they can get a top 3 pick is if Toronto's pick also goes farther than that. So it would have to be a first, second pick for the New York Rangers to have a top 3 pick. So the best likely scenario for them is that they don't do anything, but the best case scenario is that they win the Stanley Cup, Toronto picks number 1, and the Canes, which would end up being the Rangers pick, would end up being number 2. So Toronto number 1, to New York after they won the Stanley Cup. And if that's the crazy scenario there, I'm not surprised, because that is just simply put insane. Now, the Leafs and the Rangers are very equally in my love, so personally, if the New York Rangers were able to win a Stanley Cup, get a top 3 pick, and the Toronto Maple Leafs would select first overall, that would be pretty much almost the dream scenario for me personally, if we're just counting that besides Dallas winning the Cup personally. But just in terms of the hockey world exploding, I already talked about the Leafs winning a top 3 pick. Just imagine the Leafs get the first overall pick, and not just that, the Rangers get the second overall pick. It doesn't even matter who's third overall. You could forget about all of that, and just those two alone would explode, crumble, whatever you want to call it. It would put a volcano on the entire hockey landscape. Just thinking of Alexis Lafreniere of Austin Matthews and Quinton Byfield with Artemi Panarin and Capo Caco. I'm a Dallas Stars fan, dude, but yes, please. That's it. That's the tweet. But those are my 5 insane scenarios for the 2020 NHL Draft Lottery. Let me know down in the comments down below your thoughts on these insane scenarios. And let me know for your personal favorite team, what insane scenario are you looking for? Also, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell for more videos just like this one. Share this video if you haven't. Get these insane scenarios out there, boys. And click on this card right here to watch all of my hockey rankings right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I'll see you guys next video or stream. Goodbye.